Ji, Assalamu alaikum ji. Thank you very much for joining ji. I'm Abdullah Khalid, project coordinator at STPI. I welcome you all to today's webinar that is on impact of foreign exchange and letter of credit crisis on industrial growth. Before we start off the today's webinar, there are a few key housekeeping rules that I'd like to share with the esteemed panelists and the audience. Just for the panelists, I would request that our speakers to keep their microphones off when they're not speaking to ensure good audio quality for everyone. Speakers are also encouraged to switch on their cameras, especially when they're speaking, if their network allows to do without any disruption. The seminar is being recorded and the recorded version will be shared later on with the panelists for their kind review. You're welcome to revisit and share any feedback on the recorded version if you have any. We will also be inviting questions from our audience and colleagues at the end of the session. So at the end, we'll be opening the chat box for the audience. They may share their questions or they may raise their hand if there is any at the end of the session. So before we move forward, I would like to introduce the esteemed panelist to the audience before I hand over the mic to the moderator for today's session. Today we are joined by Mr. Naveed Abbas Maiman, who will be giving us special remarks. He is the Chief Domain Officer at Pakistan Single Window. We are joined by Mr. Adam G. He is Country Finance Officer, CFO at Lucky Motor Corporation Limited. We are thankful to Mr. Rehan Nasim Bharara Saab, who has joined us. He's the chairman Faisalabad Garment City. We are also joined by Mr. Anis Khwaja, who is the owner of Mahmood Group and is also representing Pakistan Business Council today. From the World Bank, we are joined by a seasoned economist, Dr. Gonzalo Varela. From SDPI, we'll be joined shortly by Dr. Sajid Amin Javed. We're thankful to Mr. Jazim Mumtaz, who's a senior researcher at Policy Research Unit at FPCCI, to join us. So I'll hand over the mic to the moderator of today's session, Engineer Ahad Nazir Saab, who is the head for Center for Private Sector Engagement, to take the discussion forward with his opening remarks and agenda setting presentation. Over to you, Ahad Saab. Thank you.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum. I hope all of you are well. This is a very opportune time to discuss this topic. But of course, we should keep in mind that this is, of course, a temporary thing. And we need to go deeper into the structural reform issues, particularly with regards to the balance of trade deficit that Pakistan is facing for almost throughout its life. We have been importing more, and the exports, of course, have not been at par with the imports. So with this, I have a brief presentation. I consider myself to be a layman in this. So this is just the layman's perspective. And of course, we will be getting back to the experts, all of the panelists after that. So if we can just share the slide, please. I hope my slide is visible. So the topic of today's webinar, the impact of foreign exchange and the letter of credit crisis on industrial growth. So here I like to mention that Pakistan, unfortunately, due to its balance of trade issue, has been facing multiple issues with regards to both the exchange rate. We usually have a duplicate effect with regards to exchange rate, and similarly the issues with the prices of the imports going up is also affecting us. So just to sort of give a sense making from a layman's perspective, this presentation will just give a brief overview of what the perception is in the market, and then of course we can go to the main discussion points. So just if we look at the data, export as a percentage of GDP is almost 9.58%, whereas imports as a percentage of GDP is 16.63%. So this is sort of a recipe that creates these issues. And of course, when we don't have foreign exchange, we have to cut loose for our imports, and it is very difficult for the regulator sometimes to differentiate between the essential items and the luxury items. And I think this is the major issue that we are facing this time as well. And of course, this also signifies that we depend on imports and basically one of the most essential commodities that we need for our industry, for our overall domestic as well as commercial ecosystem. Energy is mostly import dependent, and which is the cause of these issues. So if we just look at the overall breakup of the major imports, almost 27% are minerals, fuels, oils, distillation products, and majority of this is the energy fuel which constitutes this. And of course, then we have electronic and electrical equipment and machinery, nuclear reactors, boilers, and a lot of course, spare parts are also included in this. What this is causing is that, especially if we talk about the import dependence of the energy sector, this has created multiple issues. Like, for example, the cost of energy goes up, which overall diminishes our export competitiveness. And similarly, even when we talk about re-exports, that is export of the items that are imported through value addition, that is also not being taken care of because the high cost we have at the input, because energy is almost the input for all types of goods or services that we have. Economy, of course, becomes more susceptible to externalities. For example, the COVID will automatically affect us more because of the limitations in the supply chain. And similarly, we have also seen this during the Ukraine war. And of course, the exchange rate issues are also mainly highlighted because the gains that we have in terms of exports for devaluation are basically taken over by the adversities that we face in terms of imports. And of course, we start losing foreign exchange, and this is one of the major causes of the LC crisis that we are discussing. Of course, the government's reaction was very natural in terms of the import ban through controlling the letter of credits. But again, just as I said, it is very difficult for the regulator to determine necessities from luxuries, as far as my own perception is concerned. For example, we were discussing with one of the wind power plant developers, the HydroChina Daud, and they told us that 3 of their turbines are not functioning for the last almost 6 months, just because they are not able to import those particular wind turbine elements. And similarly, of course, we have seen the plants and industries shutting down, and this might eventually lead to increase in the informal payment mechanisms, because LCs are closed, imports are almost essential. Then the alternate channels might be there might be an increase in the usage. So way forward, I think we have had mainly short-term sort of mitigation measures taken care of, but we haven't really had a chance to discuss this, what type of structural reforms we need with regards to the cross-border trade sector. And of course, one of the things that SDPI, as well as I think we started working on this with Gonzalo, we have been really focused on the product and service diversification in exports, which of course at the moment is mainly textile, but we need to shift to other products as well, so that for example, textile exports are expected to go down because of the recession in the European and the major markets that we have. So we have to go for alternate products as well. And one of those products, of course, is service exports. So these are the major objectives for today's webinar. And of course, laymen like me and other participants that we have, are basically looking towards the experts to give us an overview of what are the main policy options which can help us move towards the rapid industrialization, which can eventually take us away from the overall balance of trade issue that I highlighted. And of course, how can we sort of, what role can State Bank of Pakistan, and of course, one of the colleagues from State Bank will be joining us during the webinar if he is not joined us yet. Similarly, what type of structural reforms can be made in the overall processing of this import that of course we need to like, for example, in order for the manufacturing units to work, we need raw materials, we need equipment, we need maintenance parts, spare parts, and how can we ensure that even if we are at a stage where we need to curtail the sort of luxury imports, we still have some sort of time available with us so that we can somehow have these essential items coming through in addition to the energy imports, of course. And of course, you are most welcome to also highlight the sort of balance of trade, balance of payment, and impact of currency valuation. How can this sort of impact be mitigated? Because this is a huge risk, and this is creating this is depleting the investors' confidence. And we have seen that a lot of this has shifted to a lot of the capital is now shifting to real estate, and of course banks, one of the reasons for being the high interest rate as well. So these are some of the things that we wanted to discuss. And of course, this is why we have this panel ready. So just moving forward, I'll just like to brief you with regards to the let me just stop sharing. So with regards to the panel structure, we normally go towards the, we tend to go towards the private sector first, but I would request initially to Naveed Memon Saab if he can maybe give us the opening remarks from Pakistan Single Window, who are co-hosting this event with us. Over to you, Naveed Saab.
Thank you, Ahad, and thank you, STPI, for collaborating with Pakistan Single Window on a very important issue of our economy, which is actually hampering the overall growth ecosystem currently. So Pakistan Single Window, being enabler of conducive trade facilitation and ease of doing environment in the country, we will be working and conducting such kind of discourse in future too. So starting with my today's discussion, I'll just highlight some of the initiatives which Pakistan Single Window has undertaken in the recent past. As today's session is also related to the foreign remittance problem, balance of payment problem. So in this sector, the Pakistan Single Window started integrating the commercial banks which are involved in this sector. So around 29 banks have been integrated with Pakistan Single Window for the management and for the conduct of cross-border remittance transactions directly in Pakistan Single Window system. So we are electronically connected, and all the LCs, all the contracts, all the payments are communicated to Pakistan Single Window on a real-time basis, and that data is available for all policymakers and for taking any decision. So that integration is very important from Pakistan's point of view, because that integration has enabled us to move forward towards more initiatives on this sector. So we are also in the process of integrating bank guarantees and converting those bank guarantees from the paperless trade into from the paper trade to the paperless trade. And we are also in the process of electronically integrating insurance policies and the guarantees. And similarly, we will be integrating the shipping lines and the banks on a single platform for the conduct of the payments related to freight. So the whole ecosystem of these cross-border payments will be covered from end to end in a very transparent and electronic way. So these are some of the initiatives which Pakistan Single Window has taken. And let me tell you that the dividends which these integrations have paying, I will just quote an example that previously the exporters were required to go to bank for getting issued e-forms for each and every consignment. When I was looking at the data that we had, that is with currently with PSW, in a very single LC, there were around more than 1,500 consignments on a single LC conducted by that exporter. Otherwise, if this integration would not have been there, he would have gone to bank 1,500 times. So this was just one example which I can quote here that we have done for the benefit of exporters and for the facilitation in cross-border trade. So now looking at from the supply value chain to bring more transparency, the more efficiency, we are also in the process of integrating and bringing in the government departments, the regulatory government departments, which were completely manual and even for paying the 200 rupees challan, the people were required to go, the importers, the exporters were required to go to banks for making those very minimal kind of payments. But now we have integrated more than 4 or 5 departments currently, which actually comprises of 75% of the total regulatory compliances of the cross-border trade. And the second phase will involve 5 or 6 more departments, and then we'll be around, that will end in the June 2023, and then we'll be able to cover around 90% of the total regulatory requirements. So these interventions have, the data shows that these interventions have really benefited the importers and exporters. And the compliances, which actually took around more than 3 to 5 days previously, now those compliances are being completed by the exporters and importers in around 1 to 2 days. This is the current the statistics which we have gathered from the data. From the maritime sector perspective, we are also in the process of implementing a port community system that will also integrate the whole maritime logistics chain starting from the shipping lines, from the manifest until the clearances, and then the handing over of the cargo to the transporters for taking that cargo to the premises of the importer or the exporter. So that maritime single window will also, I think, bring in efficiency in our terminals, in our ports, and we will be able to manage our congestion problem at the ports. Currently, the whole ecosystem of compliances involved for the vessels at our ports are completely manual on the paper or complete on paper. If a vessel has to get clearance from the regulatory departments, they have to go to more than 8 to 10 departments, and then all those departments take the papers, the data on papers about that vessel. So after implementation of that system, the whole system will be completely electronic. And on the airport side, we also in the process of designing an airport community system. So these interventions, PSW believes that they will be very crucial from in the cross-border trade and from the efficiency perspective. And from the investment perspective and providing the very reliable data to the exporters, we have launched a trade information portal of Pakistan, where the importers and exporters can get real-time, with the 1 month gap, they can get the very current data, which is authentic, and to make informed decisions about their investments, about their businesses, and coming to Pakistan, or even in Pakistan, one can decide about what to import or what to export. So these were some of the initiatives which Pakistan Window has taken, and I'm happy to share with you all people. And I'm really hopeful that today's discussions will lead to generate a very fruitful kind of leads which can be beneficial for the policymakers. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Naveen Saab. I think the sort of facilitation to the cross-border trade that we are seeing from PSW in terms of the bank integration, then TradeVerse, which is of course the data availability, which can benefit both researchers as well as businesses for forecasting, and then the port community system. These are excellent interventions. So just going forward, I would now move to Mr. Rehan Naseem Barara Saab for his comments, please, sir.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum. I hope everyone is fine, and it was lovely to listen Mr. Naveed Memon about PSW and the things what they are doing for real-time business impact and trade information portal what they are making. Unfortunately, few months back there was some problem in PSW, but I think now it's solved. Anyhow, I came to the point for today about today's subject, that is the impact of foreign exchange and letter of credit crisis on the industrial growth. Sir, unfortunately, there are a lot of things to discuss about this. What we feel bad is that we have done everything without working before. We don't have any homework before what we done. Unfortunately, as Mr. Memon also told, and Ahad, you also told, that what problem we had faced before regarding our imports and then our exports. There are a lot of things like we didn't work as a nation. We didn't work on import substitutes. That's why our import to GDP is around 17%. This held our exports also, because our total exports are based on imports, because our total exports, if I figure out, it's around 60 to 70% based on import. So this is very, very unfortunate. We didn't work ever on this. That why don't we come to the import substitute? We make our products here, and then we go for exports. Unfortunately, that is. The other problem what we had faced now what we are facing it now, that we import the goods, especially I talk about the tough machinery program, which was in the last government. We didn't work that how much machinery we should import. We import a lot of machinery with spending billions of dollars. And now almost 50% of that machinery is still in a packing position, in a boxes, or if it's installed, but unfortunately not working properly, because we don't have the raw materials to make goods on these machines. So this is very unfortunate. And because of these hundreds of billions of dollars we spent on tough program, we have lost our foreign reserves. We don't even get a benefit to export, to increase our export. If we saw in our from last 5 years, if I talk, we just improve our exports around around 17 to 20%. And if we go with the value of the currency, that is around, no, we can say it around 100% in last 5 years. So we get exports increased just 20%, and our currency devalued around 100%. So what we gain? We have lost lot of money, lot of dollars, and now we are begging for even $1 or $2 billion from different countries and our friends countries and from IMF. We are begging for that. Unfortunately, that is the other one. The problem is that we have facing a political instability that is very much damaging our businesses, our trade. So this is very much important to have a political stability in the country, because if there is no stability in the country, nobody can trust us. Our buyer will not trust us. Even our supplier are not trusting us. If we are doing importing a thing from any item from our supplier on DA basis or from last 30 or 40 years, but now we are saying that we don't have the payment, you have to change the payment plan. You can change it to 180 days DA payment, then we will able to release our goods. And lot of thousands of containers stuck at the port in last few months. But now it start clearing, but unfortunately, still the speed is very slow because we don't have the dollars. Unfortunately, the other thing that the packages given to the industry, export industry, is finished from last month. I don't know if it was a condition of the IMF or whatsoever, but that is also hurting. It will hurt our exports also, because the cost of doing business is already not normal, but now it will go more than that, because the special package is finished. And the other thing, we don't have we don't work, as I was talking, we don't work on our raw cotton, especially in the textile industry. We are short of about 5 million bales, and we have to import that. But unfortunately, we don't have dollars to import. This will create a problem for that. But come to other side, what we are facing after that, you yourself is told that we will go through illegal channels. Unfortunately, the smuggling is going on a high rate now. Everybody is at the moment, there is a high rate of smuggling in the country, and the dollars are going out on a high rate. For example, if the bank rate is 285 or 286, but the open market, what you can say, the available dollars, which is, you can say, the other means of the payment, that is around 300 rupees. So this is also hurting our reserves in dollars. We can't save the dollars right now because of this policy. I don't know how we will come out of this. This is very unfortunate. And yesterday, you again see there's an increase of 100 BPS points from the State Bank side. So how can anyone run the industry with the 23 or 24% markup? Is it workable? Is it that any country can survive? Is any industry can survive on this markup? So this is very unfortunate right now. All the policies are negative for the industry, for our trade, for import and our export. And one more thing, which is most important, which you already have discussed, even you and even Maman Sir, that the currency exchange rate, that hurt a lot. If you see from last 7 to 8 months, what we saw, that there was a import and export gap was getting higher and higher. Bank was making a lot of money out of that. For example, if the dollar was at that time 230, that import was 240. Export was 250, then import was 260. So if State Bank was allowing 5 to 6 rupees, but the banks was playing with more than that margin, and nobody take action. Even we heard and saw on the television that State Bank is taking action against banks, but unfortunately we didn't saw any action taken. Maybe some few of the banks maybe charge something, but if you saw their balance sheet, you can see the impact of the exchange rate, what they do with the importers and the exporters. This is very unfortunate, and nobody's take it seriously. So these are the things which are, I think, and you talk about what we lost, as I told you, how we lost our dollars. We lost our dollars in the tough schemes. Maybe someone agree with me or not, but we lost billions of dollars, and that we didn't get anything out of that. We didn't expand our exports. Our exports are even coming down. It's not only because of the international recession, but it's also our own problem. And especially, you can see one of my colleagues, I know that he's also be our part, but I'm not talking about this Lucky Motors, but many other car manufacturers who should have to manufacture the car in Pakistan. Unfortunately, they didn't manufacture the car and import thousands of the cars without any restriction, and we lost over billions of dollars against the importing the cars. Who has to establish a plant here, and they were allowed maybe 500 or 1,000 cars, but unfortunately many of the companies have imported more than the 1,000 cars, so we lost our dollars there also. So now we have to work on that how we can go forward into that. I think till the time our government will not take strict action. It's not the by word that I say that I will do that, but on ground there is nothing has been held, even from the State Bank of Pakistan, even from our finance ministry, nothing has been taken. Action against any one of that we can save our dollars, or either today we are not working on that. That's why I think people are not trusting us. So this is end from my side. So please you carry on.
Thank you, Rehan Saab. It's always a pleasure listening to you. I think your point about re-exports, that there is a lot of a lot of imported items that are being exported after value addition, and overall cost of doing business going up, and of course this opens up room for illegal payment mechanisms. So I'll move on next to Anis Khaja Saab. Sir, your perspective, of course, will be a bit broad, because you're also sitting on several boards, including the Pakistan Single Window, and you sit with the government regularly. I would request you to of course, I think that the problems mainly have been identified in my presentation, as well as Rehan Saab's comments. So what do you think will be a policy way forward, if I could request? Over to you, Khaja Saab.
Thank you very much. An absolute pleasure and honor to be here. This is one of the platforms I love to be a part of. I have been doing this in the past as well, and honored to be representing Pakistan Business Council this time, as well as Pakistan Single Window as well. I myself, I belong to the south of Punjab, Multan, a part of a group called Mahmood Group. We employ around 15,000 people. We are amongst the top 5 exporters out of Pakistan. And we are pretty big in women empowerment with regards to our projects getting 85% women empowerment, and in terms of sustainability also having a LEED Platinum certification, which is the highest ranked in Pakistan right now. I think first of all, I would want to highlight the opportunity which is there in this crisis as well, because all of us are talking about the problems which are coming up and the issues that we are going through, which we are. But when we look into the opportunity side and the kind of figures that we are unable to unearth is the word I would say, and a lot of products which we feel should not be imported in this country. I think we are in a much better position now to identify them and find a course of action for the future where such products are contained for the future, or we create a more of an import substitution for them where we are able to produce them. I don't want to go into the nitty-gritties of those, but there were elements which were shocking to know as well, which were being imported. So as a country, it's not a luxury that we can afford. And rather than depending on a lot of financing from our donors, and using that money to import. I think it's an opportunity for us as a country to reset ourselves, to refix ourselves, and make sure that we do not make such mistakes again in the future, and figure ourselves out on the right track, which is more of a sustainable development and sustainable growth. Secondly, I think one of the elements which I would like to highlight here is with regards to as an exporter and representing Pakistan Business Council, is the loss of credibility that we as customers, as manufacturers out of Pakistan are having in the rest of the world. So when we are giving our customers new terms every day that, our State Bank has come up with a new policy, we need to shift to this number of days for the LC, or we are not allowed to import the accessories for a garment that we have to manufacture, which they have nominated to be picked up from China, because our State Bank is giving in restrictions for that. Apart from the business effect it has, I think the bigger of the issue is that we lose a lot of credibility for our future, because this is a development that we are targeting for years to come in the last few years, in the 3 to 5 years in the past. A lot of investments were done with this ultimate goal, because the then government had given a visibility to the exporters that they are the prime, I would say, product of this country, and they have to perform to make sure that we get our exports from 17-18 billion to an approximately 50 billion target in the next few years. So we had a lot of confidence, we had a lot of clarity in terms of being able to perform accordingly. But unfortunately, with the recent turmoil, the loss of credibility, I think, is something which hurts a lot. And we are underestimating the power of that, because we've seen countries where businesses of the bigger brands, where the bigger brands have taken out their customers, and they've stopped working with these countries just because of credibility issues. So we really need to stay very alert to that, and I think whatever policies we try and form, we need to make sure that this is taken care of, and the banking laws, the commitments, and the credibility Pakistan has developed in all these years, that should not be lost. Now, coming to, I think you mentioned that what could be the potential possibility of policy making. First of all, and I think this is what the donors as well as IMF is also pushing, is that we cannot bring in such restrictions the way we are operating right now. And unfortunately, we're still not in the IMF program, so we cannot say that this is something which can happen that quickly. But the bottom line is that the business has to flow on its own. Yes, you need to bring in curtailments. You need to stop the luxury of items which we cannot afford as a country. But the policy has to support an exporter. The policy has to support import substitution manufacturing. The policy has to support not just assembly of vehicles here, but the manufacturing of vehicles. The policy has to support the manufacturing of mobile phones, and not just the assembly of mobile phones. Technology needs a lot of boost here in this country, and for that also the couple of packages and the couple of incentive models which were brought in, then they were not followed up, or they were just taken back. So what we have to understand is that we have to create that right environment. We have to create that right kind of visibility for the businessmen and the entrepreneurs to take a step forward and see how they can actually work on this order of business, that their confidence is not shattered. Now, in the 20-25 years of work that I've done, I think after every 5 years, we get into this place where we are made to reset, where all our policies, where all our business plans are basically sent to dust, because there's a new regime which needs something new. And I thank our donors, I thank our institutions like IMF for trying to put us on track, that regardless of the political regime change, we need a charter of economy which needs to be followed as a country. So I think these are some various factors which will bring in, and I don't want to just keep going on for the sake of repetition because a lot has been said. But the bottom line is that a structure which the country can afford, a structure which can actually bring and resolve the core issues, and a structure which is more sustainable on our own growth is the way forward. And that is the only way businesses can operate. Unfortunately, the times we are going through, these are very tough with interest rates of 22 to 25%. I don't think companies can survive. We are looking at a lot of bankruptcies coming in. We are looking at a lot of layoffs coming in. I hope our institutions are prepared to handle that as well. And I hope that the IMF program happens very soon so that we are able to bring in some sort of direction in this storm we are right now in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anis Saab. I think your points, especially with regards to the policy making and the political consensus, they are very well noted. So moving on, I would request Adamji Yaqub Saab for his remarks, please.
Thank you very much. Just a minute, I'm just sharing a slide as well. Just an introduction. Obviously, I'm the CFO of Lucky Motto Corporation. First of all, thank you very much for inviting Lucky Motto Corporation to the webinar. I'm going to discuss some of the challenges which are being faced currently, along with my recommendations as well. The slide I've shared is a summary of the recommendations on which I'm going to speak about. Just an introduction of Lucky Motto Corporations. We assemble Kia and Peugeot brand vehicles in Pakistan. We are at the first stage, obviously, as Mr. Anis said, assembling is the first stage. The next stage would be manufacturing. So right now we are assembling Kia and Peugeot brand vehicles, plus we are assembling Samsung mobile phones in Pakistan. We employ directly around 2,000 people. We had 2,000 people at the start of the crisis and about 1,000 indirect workforce as well. We were operating double shift till last year. Unfortunately, due to the current LC restrictions, import restrictions, we have to operate at a minimum capacity right now. A brief, I'm going to touch base a minute on the auto sector, then obviously I'm going to come on the issues which we are facing, the practical issues which we are facing along with recommendations. The automobile is one of the fastest growing economic forces in the world. And Pakistan, if you rank Pakistan, Pakistan is the 35th largest automobile producer in the world. And Pakistan automobile industry contributes around 50 billion to the national exchequer. These are the figures of last year. And the industry accounts for 4% of the GDP and employs around 3.5 million people throughout the industry. Auto and mobile, obviously, these are import substitution industries in Pakistan, and we manufacture after importing some basic raw material. We assemble after importing some basic raw material. Obviously, 100% import substitution can't be done in Pakistan because the basic raw material is not available, unfortunately, in Pakistan. So whenever an industry is established, some of the raw material has to be imported if the industry has to survive. Even our Pakistan steel industry, the scrap is also imported right now, unfortunately. So the basic raw material is not available in Pakistan. So the import substitution would mean that some of the imports are reduced. 30-40% value addition is done, and that's how the industry normally is established in Pakistan. So now let me walk you through what practical difficulties we face in the past couple of months and what are the solutions to those. In July 2022, in fact, Exchange Policy Department of State Bank of Pakistan, everybody would recall, issued a circular in which all LC importing banks, all commercial banks of Pakistan were required, mandated by State Bank to get the approval from the regulator before transmitting LCs. So what happened was, obviously, if an importer used to apply for 100 LCs, they used to get approval for around 50 LCs. So obviously, these were being regulated. And so just an impact was that 50% of the auto industry sales dropped from June to July. There was a 58% drop in the sales as well, just to signify that obviously the import requirements were curtailed. Then what happened was it was going well till December. Then in December, suddenly a circular came again from State Bank of Pakistan, in which they categorically said banks to prioritize essential commodities only. What happened was this resulted in further restrictions, and most of the banks were not willing to open LCs, resulting in complete blockage of raw materials. Now, industrial sector, apart from providing goods, also provides employment to many. We understand that the current account pressure did force these measures, but I would suggest that allowing a fraction of the raw materials so that the industries can operate at a bare minimum is very important for Pakistan itself in the foreign exchange planning. So my first recommendation to obviously the State Bank of Pakistan and the policymakers is that at least, if not 50%, 40% of the imports should be allowed to the manufacturers, so that at least the industry keeps rolling, the employment continues, and the fixed capital investment obviously is not just simply put in a dump, it's wasted. Some payback, etc. continues. If the economy has to be kept on float, if you just close down the industry, obviously the economy is going to come at halt. This is my first recommendation. Obviously, it's mentioned in my PPT, which I shared as well. My second, observation is that we assemble mobile phones as well. We assemble Samsung mobile phones. The second thing which happened was, since our LCs were not being opened, we had no raw material to supply to the market. But we noticed that the CBU phones, which is completely built units, phones manufactured outside Pakistan or in Pakistan, they were available somehow coming in the market, the unofficial channels, as Mr. Rehan just pointed out as well in his speech, through smuggling or something, unofficial channels, the mobile phones availability in Pakistan, the completely built unit mobile phones continued. So this not only hurt in local industry, the government revenue, employment, obviously because the industries right now are hiring people to manufacture phones or assemble phones. And if the CBU phones continue to come in from outside Pakistan, then obviously everything is being wasted. So my second recommendation is that to stop, obviously we know that measures are being taken by the government to stop this menace. But the Pakistan Telecommunication Authority needs to take some steps and allow the activation of such phones, because obviously by paying a nominal amount of fee, these CBU phones get activated. They continue to be available without even knowing the source of these supplies. These get activated through the Pakistan Telecommunication Authority. So my second recommendation is that there should be some control on this. There was an interesting article published in Business Reporter last week. The title of the article was "A Hawala Tsunami." Okay, now State Bank in the December circular, it also gave an option for a 365-day deferred payment option that you can import if you give a 365-day deferred payment option. Now, first of all, a normal, a genuine importer giving a 365-day credit, it's somehow very difficult because obviously the exchange rate, the devaluation, you import, you sell it in Pakistan rupee, you import in dollars. So the devaluation, etc. impact, considering this, it's very, very difficult to get this. But somehow this channel is being utilized by some wholesalers and retailers. What are they doing is they are importing, they have some companies established in Dubai. They send the money through Hawala. This is written in the newspaper. Obviously, I'm not privy to it, but obviously I'm telling you what is written in the newspaper, the business provider. So this, they send the money through Hawala. They get the goods imported. Officially, the CBU phones manufactured outside Pakistan, in Pakistan. They get it activated through PTA. And somehow the manufacturing industry, the industry is not able to do anything with it. The employment, etc., the industries are closed, and the employments, etc., all are being impacted. The government revenues, everything is being impacted. So my suggestion, number 2B, basically in this would be that non-essential items should be, if they are even allowed in the 365-day credit period, they should be 100% cash margin against those imports. So such sort of policies, if they are being a loophole is found in them, so obviously those are being blocked through the policy measures. Another important thing is that mobile and auto, they have been categorized as non-essential commodity, when in fact most of the people on this webinar, they're also listening on the mobile phones. Mobile phones have become an essential part of it. So a structural recommendation would be to consider what is essential and what is non-essential, and then a policy should be formulated and implemented rather than an ad hoc decision making, which is currently being done. One of my third recommendations, which is on the slide, is point number 3 is the forward covered option. Obviously, there's a practical example. One of the manufacturers, they were allowed deferred payment option, and they brought in goods, raw material, but due to the severe devaluation, they are in huge losses and they are not able to sustain their business right now in Pakistan. So my third recommendation would be a forward. Previously, 6 months forward option was available for imports, but somehow right now it's getting difficult. And when the State Bank is introducing the scheme of deferred payments, forward cover should be also there, so that the local businesses who are doing sales in Pakistan rupee, they are protected as well. The fourth important area which I would want to highlight is exports as well. Those industries or groups who are exporting, like say, for example, the Yunus Brothers Group, Lucky Group, we basically are among the top 100 exporters, or 3 more companies are in the top 100 group as well. So if we are allowed to import as well for our other industries against our export proceeds, which we bring in, so this will also give confidence to the Pakistani investors. The fifth area which I would want to highlight is, which Anisa also just touched base on, was one thing which is happening right now in Pakistan is that even if the LCs, they are open, some of the banks, they are not paying or settling the LCs within the Incoterms, which are obviously governed by the international regulations. Say, for example, 5 days are allowed after for the payment of when the documents come in. But some of the banks, they are still reluctant to release the payments for the established LCs as well. So what is happening is the suppliers' confidence and trust in the Pakistan banking system and Pakistanis importers is dying down. So the fifth important recommendation is that the trust of the banking system should be upheld at all times. Trust once lost, this will take ages and ages to develop. One of the more, obviously, these were some practical issues and some of my recommendations. Apart from this, the ease of doing business, obviously, I wanted to highlight Pakistan Business Council and the OCCI. Both chambers are working on this. The ease of doing business index, if you must be aware, this is basically an indicator of the foreign direct investment coming in Pakistan when we are short of reserves, short of FX. Obviously, we need foreign direct investment coming into Pakistan. Pakistan ranks 108 out of 190 countries in 2020 World Bank's report. Now, we are better than 72 countries. That's very good to hear. But we are still 108 in the rank. We have obviously far off than 107 countries, which are better than us. But this ranking was published before these issues like trade issues, import issues, quota issues happened. Now, I wonder what will be the ranking be now? Will we just simply move on to the last part? These restrictions not only impact the investors' confidence, but the future inflows, future direct investments, and the long-term issues obviously will also be impacted because of these, and the ease of doing business ranking will go down. Plus, international community will obviously view this as a non-favorable environment, and there will be challenges in the foreign investment coming into Pakistan. So this all needs to be looked at by the regulator as well. Last but not the least, the State Bank has to ensure that the limited foreign exchange reserves are utilized optimally to meet the country's growing import demand, including the need for importing raw material for the auto industry. We can work closely with the regulator to address the challenges. And in conclusion, I would want to re-emphasize again that industrialization is also very important. Just temporarily closing down gates on the industry raw material will not help. Industrialization ensures economic activity, which is very much important. Inflation's is more than 35% right now in Pakistan. Employment and generation is through industrialization. Crime rate reduction is through industrialization. Sustainability of the flows and continuity of the government revenues. So in nutshell, these are some of the issues we are currently facing as an importer of import substitution. Obviously, there are many long-term policy measures which everybody says incentivize exports, imports, have a stable FX rate, have some transparency in the exchange policy, etc. These are also important, and but I think the short-term measures which I've just highlighted, these would be very much fruitful as well for the economic growth and development of Pakistan, along with the FX specific. Thank you.
Thank you, Adamji Saab. I think this was very comprehensive. Next up, if we can move to Shabir Mancha Saab, who is the Vice President of FTCCI.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity. This is really a nice platform to discuss the issues that we have. First of all, I would like to appreciate SDPI and Pakistan Single Window to highlight one of the most important issues faced by the industries and in Pakistan. However, it would have been better if those people from the State Bank would have been here and actually the decision makers. Instead, that we just keep discussing here within ourselves, and the State Bank seems to be very little concerned with what's been happening here. Instead, and the other decision maker from the ministries should have been here so that it would have been communicated. Rightly pointed out by the moving on. Rightly pointed out by the Mr. Rehan Naseem, the turf scheme issues that were actually given at that time. And that was a really good gesture that was given. But unfortunately, it has been a historically consistent lacking in our parts of the government's policies, where there is no policies in terms of impact analysis that we come across, or kind of problems that any policy given to the public is going to have an impact. This was very important that was highlighted. In addition to that, there was importantly the sector that was identified by him was the agriculture sector, where the cotton is, where the Pakistan used to actually export cotton, raw cotton at the time, and the industry was actually brought into place to support that. And now we are in a situation, we have more industry and the less cotton which is there. And what are the impacts? And we have no impact analysis being done ever in regard. It is not just this present government or the previous government. It is a consistent policy impact that come across. And the issue raised by him was also the smuggling and the US dollar issue with the exchange rate. And I also appreciate the discussion done by our colleague, Mr. Anis Faider. He's being very positive, and the credibility loss that he fears is actually a very real concern for the all the businesses here in Pakistan, because if we come across with the credibility loss or the goodwill loss with the international community or the domestic community, where business community actually gives a lot of importance to that and believes that if we have a credibility loss or the goodwill loss, and we are in the middle of nowhere. Regarding the IMF thing, actually publicly, where the IMF is being told and taken as a some kind of real bad thing in Pakistan society. However, to me in person, I believe the IMF actions which are required are actually the demand of the business community as well. Basically, if we go across we are told to have a discipline in the power sector, and we need to avoid this circular debt. If we are being told by them to have a circular debt to be controlled, which is going over 200 billion. So it is really difficult for us as a Pakistani that instead of rectifying the problem, it is even the rates are being increased, in all aspects. Instead, we go back to the energy loss. We have the efficiency improvement. We have the energy mix that need to be addressed. But the real impact that all the decision makers go through is just increase the rate with the fuel adjustment, increase the rate, which actually impact negative to the industry. Instead, it should have been rectifying those problems, but that money is recovered with the line losses, which should have been actually been recovered. But that goes again to the person who's already paying it, and he has to bear more pressure or more expensive inputs, and that creates difficulties in the industry, having the industry being already under pressure with so much of a high interest rate, which is already pointed out. Practically, it is not possible. Practically, it is not possible for any industry to sustain with the 20-21% discount rates and having this spread over for 2-3% and then earn for themselves. This is virtually impossible with the raw material not being available, and the State Bank putting on the restrictions that this kind of problems do continue, and this is really a serious problem. Coming to the point raised by Mr. Adamji Yaqub, again, the main problem we see is that he wanted to discuss on the allocate a quota, which was being done by the State Bank, but the commercial banks are not operating in this way. Regarding this, I think the objective we have for this webinar, I would like to go on with that actually. They highlight the policy measures to move forward industrialization and to boost economy. Actually, we need to have a couple of things very straight, and irrespective of which government is there, which government is not there, it has to be a long-term policy. And long-term policy, not just long-term policy, but with the impact analysis on that policy. Unfortunately, the current situation that we come across is that we always having an ad hoc policy. We didn't know what we are going up to and what is the next plan. And the situation we end up is to have, again, the ad hoc policies again and again. For example, the long-term policies that we had earlier was the CNG policy. When there was a CNG policy, everybody was encouraged to have the CNG coming into Pakistan, and then all of a sudden the gas has vanished in Pakistan and the gas crisis has emerged as a huge problem to us. Unless we have a long-term policy with the impact analysis onto it, we are going to have always going to have a problems. Regarding the interest rate that I already spoke about, and we again like to emphasize something very important, that we have no clear plans from anyone, not the government. We just come across with this sudden kind of things that suddenly there's in the May 2022, there's a one SRO comes in and we are being informed that the goods are being stopped, the luxury goods are being stopped. We have no problems that if those goods are actually stopped or restricted or have problems when there is a difficult situation. We are not actually against it, but the way it is done on the sudden SRO which is done there, this is not the way it should have been. They should have been given a reasonable time, because all the this goodwill gesture, goodwill with the customers, clients, suppliers is always there, and the goods are always in the production line. Again, moving the next month, another State Bank issue a circular where they restrict suddenly restrict those goods at chapter 84, 85, and 87. They actually don't understand the real problem. The State Bank don't understand the real problem. They only look at the fiscal side of it. We also need to have the economic side of it, trade side of it, and the other stakeholders should have been always on the board. And moving on next to the political stability. Unfortunately, political stability, unless there is a political stability, investments can never stay. And if investments cannot hold on, this is a problem which is going to sustain forever, and we have to just be very serious on it and move something that we come across with the at least economic policies which should not be related to any government policies. All the stakeholders, and that includes the political consensus of the opposition and the government and any other governments or the other stakeholders should be on board on the long-term basis. And this is much need of a time at the moment as well, and the long term as well. And one more serious concern that we would like to highlight. I hope those colleagues from the policy making are there, and the World Bank is also listening this. To me, there is very little consultation with the stakeholders, the real stakeholders. Unfortunately, Federation of Pakistan being the mother and the apex body of all Pakistan trade and industry, and we are not taken on board with the long-term and the short-term policies and how to go about it. It's been many times that the relevant ministers or the secretaries are not actually in consultation with the real stakeholders. We come across here with the elections, we have the pulse with all the relevant sector. People do approach us, and every sector of Pakistan which is registered as a business is affiliated with us, and we have the real pulse of it. But when there is an anomaly committee, and with the anomaly committee, some banker is made as a chairman of the anomaly committee, so that means there is no seriousness to the actually resolution of the problems. The real stakeholders should actually be consulted in the policies. And unfortunately, I have one more point to make, that those policy makers are like the secretaries of the relevant ministries which work there. The secretaries which work there are really unfortunate. I feel really unfortunate for them that sometimes they are moved into the livestock, and sometimes they moved to the other sectors like power sector or the petroleum sectors or the public sector development, and the secretaries keep changing. Then comes to the finance, and then comes to the other forestry department and secretary forestry. So this is a very serious concern, that expert of all times, whenever the institution wants to hire somebody, he should hire somebody from the same sector. But having this real problem and a challenging situation for those even government officials, this is very difficult, that they cannot be expert of everything. So this has to be actually rectified to have a sustainable policies, because the political government come and go, but actually the policy is run by the bureaucracy, and the bureaucracy should be well aware of what all the facts keep going in. I have few remarks that I need to make on regard to the situation that we come across is to emphasize regarding the availability and the cost input of what's the role of the State Bank, and to discuss solution and the process of the timely establishment of the LCs, and how we can increase and improve the foreign. I think I would like to actually explain the situation, what actually emerged and what has resulted that, and what is the solution coming forward. In the recent past, when the State Bank policy came for the restricting of goods, and I had explained that to the Minister of Commerce as well as to the Minister of Shipping as well while discussing with them. The situation that Pakistan at this moment is facing is the dollar shortage. $80 billion was the imports that we had last fiscal year, and we have exports of around 31 billion, and we have like home remittance of 31 and exports of 33 billion. So that comes to around 64 billion. And State Bank was trying to restrain or slow down the impact or depleting the dollars. But what actually has resulted is not the right thing. The important thing which has happened, that the dollars which were being stopped by the policy for the financial instrument, which were regularly being issued previously by the commercial banks, and not has been stopped, but later when it was stopped, the same dollars started to, but the demand in Pakistan remained as the same it was. Somehow, like my earlier speakers mentioned, that somehow the dollars are available, and those dollars are available from on the market or the open market, where the goods are being imported indirectly somehow to the our neighboring country, Afghanistan and Dubai and other Middle Eastern countries. And those countries, somehow the goods come and keep pouring in Pakistan. And the exchange rate for that is for around 300 and 300 plus for that. And the domestic rate for the bank exchange rate with is around 280. 85. So this is something which is very serious, and the difference of 25 rupees per dollar is making a real impact, which is actually creating some difficulties for that people to come in. But what is happening because of it? When the goods are being imported to Afghanistan via Kandahar or Jalalabad, and goods start to go to this Bandarabad, and from Bandarabad it comes to Pakistan somehow or the other. So through this porous border, what is actually happening? The actual importers, who were the legitimate importers, are not able to import those, but the goods coming in Pakistan are through the smuggled factors. And those smuggled factors are actually contributing to the economy, which is undocumented economy. Already we have very good information to the Pakistan has equally undocumented economy as documented economy. A large segment of Pakistan economy is undocumented. So it will not just go to the undocumented economy, which is being increased, but also the loss of taxation, the taxes. The Pakistan actually is facing a real problem with the shortage of the revenue. If that is come through the legal channels, and that legal channels are required to be brought in the goods which are raw material, and those goods which are not actually essential, maybe those regularity duties or the additional custom duties could be increased, or the non-tariff barriers could be engaged into it. It is not necessary to stop something or ban some products coming into Pakistan, but the other non-tariff barriers.
May I request, अगर आप kindly जरा जल्दी wind up कर लें, तो फिर क्योंकि आगे अभी 2 speakers रहते हैं, time हमारा होने वाला है.
Sir, आपने पहले मौका बाद में दिया, and I was supposed to speak, and I need to make some points. I'll try to conclude.
I would request कि थोड़ा सा brief कर लें आप.
Yes. Coming on to the fact that this thing is actually now this coming to the solution, because I'm being told to just coming back to the solution, that I think the best solution is that all the money which is going out of Pakistan is through the undocumented way is required to be brought in by the exchange companies. Those are legal money of Pakistan, and that money for the home remittance as well as to the export proceeds which were not delayed export proceeds, or the exports which are undocumented, are being held outside Pakistan, and that we estimate is around $12 billion which are not coming in Pakistan. If that $12 billion is brought in Pakistan through the legal means and without having any problems, because those are actual legitimate money of Pakistan, and that money can come in Pakistan $1 billion a month, and that $1 billion can actually contribute to the national revenue. And the way to that is if we can have close meeting with the real concern, and that can be explained how that money can come into Pakistan. Thank you.
Shabir Saab, I think your points, especially with regards to the availability and affordability of energy, political consensus building, economic analysis, impact assessment, and the inclusivity in policy making are very well noted. And especially your point, last point, with regards to discouraging these illegal means of bringing in foreign exchange also need to be accounted for. So I'll go over next to Dr. Gonzalo Varela from World Bank. He has been waiting and listening to all what has been said. So I would request him if he can give his remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahad. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you to PSW that I think is doing a fantastic job in reducing trade costs in Pakistan, which is extremely important. And it's a pleasure to be here with the rest of the speakers. I heard really interesting ideas here. So happy to be in this really rich exchange. So I'm going to focus on what the question or what the main theme of this webinar was. That is related to the impact of import restrictions in the form of LCs, restrictions to open LCs, and what are the implications for industrial growth. So I'm going to make 3 points. And the first point I'm going to make is that these restrictions are a response to a current account deficit, to a balance of payments deficit, to a scarcity of foreign exchange. Now, the issue is that there is a misdiagnosis of what are the underlying causes of the current account deficit. So we are mixing two things. We are mixing what is the symptom. So when we have a current account deficit, we have imports that are greater than exports. And so we think the imports are the problem, and we treat them as such. But actually, a current account deficit is the product of an economy that is not saving enough compared to what it invests. And in the case of Pakistan, the problem is not that investment is really high. The problem is that saving is extremely low. And if you look at the composition of that saving, the challenge is not so much with the private sector. The challenge is with the public sector saving. Why? Because the country has run persistent, large fiscal deficits. So the key problem in the current account deficit of Pakistan is not related to high dependence on imports. In fact, imports are not high in Pakistan. They are 16% of GDP. Cross-country comparison, they're extremely low, actually. The problem is a large fiscal deficit that leads to a large current account deficit. So if you think that way, then import restrictions are not going to be the way forward to fix the problem of the balance of payments. They're not going to be the way forward for 2 reasons. First of all, because import restrictions create what we call an anti-export bias. So when you put restrictions to imports, you create more incentives for firms to sell in the domestic market. And these firms that sell more in the domestic market means that they export less. And if they export less, then you have the current account problem, even with the import restrictions anyway. Now, this, and perhaps to create a little bit of, to be provocative, this casts some doubt on how powerful or how good for the economy can be an import substitution strategy. Because an import substitution strategy that generally comes in the form of some sort of import duties to protect specific sectors ends up substituting exports instead, because import substitution policies introduce an anti-export bias. And this is what we have been seeing in Pakistan over the past probably 30, 40 years. If you look at the efforts, the fiscal efforts the country makes to help inward-oriented industries, is much bigger than the fiscal effort it makes to help export-oriented industries. Just to give you one example, under the 5th schedule of the Tariff Code, Pakistan forgoes 170 billion, fiscal year 22, they forwent 170 billion rupees in the form of exemptions for domestic-oriented tariff import duty exemptions for domestic-oriented firms. And it only gave, or the tax expenditures for exporters, for import duties that were exempted for exporters were 50 billion rupees, so less than 3 times what is given to inward-oriented industries. And that is at the core also of the current account deficit. The fact that you have these import substitution policies that create the incentives for firms to focus in the domestic market rather than in export markets. So generally speaking, import restrictions are not the way forward. They create an anti-export bias, but in the context of production networks, in the context of global value chains, like trade is organized, has been organized in the past 2-3 decades, you need to import to be able to be competitive, to produce and sell competitively in domestic or foreign markets. So you need to import to export. And so any restriction, and I think this goes to the comment that Navid Memon was making at the beginning, any restriction to the imports of raw materials, intermediates, capital equipment means that factories are stopped and they are deterred in their ability to produce more and produce better. Now, when it comes to the specific type of import restrictions that is supposed to be the theme of this seminar, that is administrative restrictions, foreign exchange rationing. So these are extremely problematic. So these restrictions to open letters of credit, they're extremely problematic because basically they imply that there is a bureaucrat who decides who gets what and at what price. And so this creates bad incentives. It creates rents because they're lucky enough to get the letter of credit approved or to get that foreign exchange that is being rationed is going to get a benefit that is really high compared to the other one that didn't get that letter of credit. So the opportunities for rent seeking here are huge. So firms, instead of focusing on their core competence and producing more and better, they're focusing on extracting these rents. I'm talking about assuming there's no corruption in the process, right? It's just, it just creates a lot of incentives for rent seeking. But it also creates another big problem, that is uncertainty, because firms don't know if they're going to get it or not, if they're going to get the letter of credit approved or not. And uncertainty, and it has been mentioned by many of my colleagues here in this panel, uncertainty with respect to policies, but uncertainty with respect to getting or not this letter of credit approved, leads to inaction, deters investment. So I would say that the big issue here is the distortions that have led to the economy to be where it is. On this, we have a recent report that looks at this in quite some detail that is called From Swimming in Sand to High and Sustainable Growth, a roadmap for achieving high and sustainable growth in Pakistan. And I will take the invitation that the Vice President of FPCCI made. We would be really glad to engage more with FPCCI. And in fact, we were supposed to do a launch of this report jointly with FPCCI in Lahore about a month ago, and we hope to be able to organize it post once Ramadan ends, and perhaps at the beginning of May. So I will follow up with him on that. So reducing the distortions means basically tax eliminate or basically making tax policy more homogeneous across sectors. So all sectors of the economy contribute to tax collection, and I'm talking real estate and I'm talking land, but also I'm talking about reducing import duties so that this anti-export bias of the tariff policy is eliminated and firms have more incentives to export and less to sell in the domestic market. It was mentioned before, and I think it was Anis Khwaja that mentioned we need import substitution and we need export-led growth or support to exporters. I think both things are incompatible. Policies that support import substitution are going to deter export performance, or at least the type of policies that currently are in place for substituting imports deter export growth. So we need to think, or Pakistan needs to think better how to combine these two things, or perhaps how to move to an export-led growth model. And also, the third layer of distortions are related to the incentives that exporters receive. Exporters don't receive a lot of incentives compared to other sectors, but some incentives are out there, and these incentives tend to be really biased against diversification and against innovation. These incentives are concentrated in the usual textile and apparel sectors that tend to get a share that is larger than their fair share in terms of their contribution to the export sector, and that actually deters the emergence of new activities, of new sectors that could be potentially growth poles for the economy. So I will stop here, but I will, just to summarize, I will say I think there are three issues here. The first one is, let's diagnose correctly what the problem is. The current account deficit problem is not a problem of imports being high, so you won't fix it by restricting imports. It's a problem of it's saving and investment imbalance in the economy, very much associated with a large, persistent fiscal deficit. Import restrictions don't help because they create an anti-export bias, because they kill global value chains. So they kill any possibility that Pakistan may have of joining global value chains. And third, particularly these administrative restrictions create bad incentives because they create the possibility of rents and because they create a lot of uncertainty. So I'll stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gonzalo. It's always a pleasure and a good learning experience listening to you. And I think all the points that you summarized are well noted. So we are almost out of time. So I would now request Dr. Sajid Amin, who is the Deputy Executive Director Research at STPI, to give his remarks as well as the concluding remarks. Over to you.
Thank you. Ahad, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. I think let me congratulate both PSW, Pakistan Single Window, and SDPI for bringing this discussion, like Gonzalo has mentioned and many other colleagues also mentioned. This is really a very key fundamental issue at Pakistan's thinking on our economic and structural problems. And I hope that discussion and the PSW going forward can sort of bring some sort of a more clarity on that what Pakistan needs to do actually. I mean, we as Gonzalo mentioned, that we have to make it very clear that are we going for import substitution as we have been going over the 7 decades? Or we are going to for export promotion, because both require a very fundamentally different macroeconomic and other policies. So we have to, and I think this clarity will be coming from your interventions. Coming to your question on the impact actually, while so much has been said and so much good has been said that not much good is left for me to say. So I'd just like to add one point on actually this one, that this impact is just beginning actually. Whenever you have a currency controls, import controls, the impact with the lag is even larger than the immediate impact that comes actually. I mean, the trust gap on the policy that it has created, the market distortions, not only in sort of industries, overall interest rate distortions, the exchange rate distortions, the inflation, the cost of production that is going, these distortions create an uncertainty and policy discredit actually. And this really has a very long-term impact. And one point that I was discussing with Dr. Waqar, and we both, and Dr. Waqar highlighted actually it, and that I think is going forward a very serious point, is that these restrictions were coming from current account deficit, sort of the shortage of dollars that is to be there at least next 3 to 4 or 5 years. And that can really make us understand that these kind of controls explicitly or implicitly will remain in place. And this has one at least key implications, many, but one, that the high value addition exports will be drying up in next 3 to 4 or 5 years actually. And Pakistan's export basket may shift from the high value added exports to a low value added exports, because high value added exports which consume imported raw materials will be facing difficulty in getting those materials, and it can change the export basket of Pakistan in 3 to 4 or 5 years, and the losses may be even for the longer terms, because you are shifting from a high value exports to the low value added exports. But this can also give a task to us as well, maybe PSW and SDPI and colleagues. What will be our export basket in next 3 years, for example, if until and unless we have these controls there, be it implicit, I mean, because we know that foreign reserves, Forex will be critical in next 2 to 3 years. What can be those areas? Because I believe that the industries like textile, which are our traditional export sectors, steels, they will be suffering problems because of input import materials will be very limited, restricted or delayed. So maybe this can also give a question that what will be the exports that Pakistan will be making next 2 to 3 years, and maybe something like agriculture, iron, hosiery, that will be our export basket. In terms of overall, I think this policy created, if I can just summarize what has been said, we are almost above time. The number one, it really created a distrust on policy and on the institutions, which is your exchange rate policy, trade policies, whatever it is. The procurements are not safe in Pakistan for export industry or for trade industries. So this really created a policy discredit and a trust gap, not only within Pakistan, but across the trade, the cross-border trade as well. Many orders were delayed, missed. So this has created a trust deficit on policy and between the trading partners. And this is really worrying for a country like Pakistan, which Gonzalo also mentioned, that our problem is low exports, not high imports, actually. And this policy was actually further deepening this problem because it was taxing exports at the cost of some sort of building reserves for the time being, actually. Also, this policy was very inconsistent, like it was mentioned. It was no procedures, who gets what. It was on a random base. Once you can open LC anytime, you may not get the approvals. So these approvals actually had sort of again caused the delayed inputs and others. My second point on this was that was again coming from all the panelists, that it has created distortions in export and trade market of Pakistan through multiple policy distortions, as I mentioned, exchange rate, interest rate, and others. And this really has on immediate impact on industry was sort of delayed input imports, and of course suffering then the export orders, and then the cost of production increased, financial loss, liquidity crunches. They are there. But I think there is another lagged impact that is in the broader sense that can help the FDIs in this kind of regime. The country like Pakistan, which has already very low FDI, sort will be suffering more on in terms of attracting FDIs in these inconsistent policies and anti-export policies, actually, which has a long-term impact in terms of your industrial productivity growth, which already we have a very low. So this was also coming, but more in terms of developmental impact also, it goes beyond industry. Even the large scale industry, which then, for example, if you take the steel industry implications, they will be extending to your construction sector and other allied sectors, which roughly provide you jobs, 7.5 million jobs or more than less. So these kind of controls, import controls, have a very wide range implications on employment, on poverty, and others. And my final point, I think, on this one is that going forward, maybe PSW and STPI and other development partners I highlighted already may need a more careful understanding on a short term, particularly that what will be our export basket, given these controls are there implicitly, and all of you know that they are there and will be in place next 3 to 5 years, most probably. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sajid. With this, we come to the end of this webinar. We have just gone 5 minutes above the time that we thought we will end by. Of course, we had some questions in the Q&A box, but I think we were not able to answer them. But we will be sharing them with the panelists if anyone will like to get back to the person who has asked those questions. Any further questions may directly be sent to abdullah@stpi.org, and we will be coming back to you with the answers as soon as we can. Of course, this topic, I think, demanded more than one session. So I think I will discuss with Dr. Sajid and Dr. Bucar, and we might go for another session on the same topic as well, because of the sort of enrichment in the discussion. I would also advise the team that is taking notes to share the policy recommendations with all the panelists as well as the participants, so that we can have, and of course, then we can send it to the other, of course, the partners like State Bank who are not here. So thank you all for joining, and it's always a pleasure to listen to all the experts. And we, of course, will be coming back to you with the next episode of this webinar series. So thank you very much.